In today's lesson, we're going to have a look at the basics of fraction, decimal and percentage conversions. In the lessons to follow, we'll make this more challenging. It's therefore really important that you have a very secure understanding of how to do each type of conversion we look at today. There are 6 types of fraction, decimal and percentage conversions that you need to know. Firstly, we'll look at percentages into decimals and fractions. Secondly, we'll look at decimals into percentages and fractions, and lastly we'll look at fractions into percentages and decimals. So firstly, to convert from a percentage to a decimal, you simply divide the value of the percentage by 100. In my first example, I'm asked to write 90% as a decimal. So I'd take the value of the percentage, which is 90, and divide it by 100. That would give me an answer of 0.90, which is the same as 0.9. In my second example, I'm asked to write 5% as a decimal. So I'd take 5, which is the percentage value, divide it by 100, and this would give me an answer of 0.05. Just take care to make sure your decimal point is positioned in the right place. To convert from a percentage to a fraction, you take the value of the percentage and write it out of 100. You then look to see if you can cancel this fraction down. It's good practice to write down the fraction out of 100 and then the simplified version to make sure you get all marks in the exam. So in my first example, I'm asked to write 27% as a fraction. I'd start off by taking the percentage value of 27 and writing it over 100. In this particular example, I can't cancel it down, so this would be my final answer. In my second example, I'm asked to write 36% as a fraction. So again, I'd say that this is 36 over 100 and then try and cancel it down. This time I can divide the top and bottom by 4, so this would give me 9 over 25 as my simplified answer. To convert from a decimal to a percentage, you simply multiply the value of the decimal by 100. This is obviously the inverse of converting from a percentage to a decimal. In my first example, I'm asked to write 0.45 as a percentage. So I take the value of my decimal, 0.45, and multiply it by 100, and that gives me an answer of 45%. In my second example, I'm asked to write 0.07 as a percentage. So again, I'll take 0.07, multiply it by 100, and this gives me an answer of 7%. As with before, it's really important you make sure that your decimal place ends up in the right position. To convert from a decimal to a fraction, we're going to use 2 of our previous conversions to help us out. Firstly, we're going to convert it into a percentage, and then we're going to write this value out of 100 and cancel the fraction we get down. So firstly, I know that 0.3 as a percentage would be 0.3 times by 100, which is 30%. Therefore, I can say as a fraction it's going to be 30 out of 100. If I divide the top and bottom by 10, this cancels down to 3 over 10, and that would be my final answer. Likewise, in my second example, I need to take 0.02 and times it by 100 to convert it into a percentage, so that's 2%. I can then say that my fraction would be 2 over 100. If I divide the top and bottom by 2, this gives me a simplified answer of 1 over 50. The final 2 conversions look at changing from fractions into percentages and decimals. As discussed at the start, we're only going to have a look at the basics of this today, and we'll have some harder examples for lessons in the future. So for the examples we're going to look at today, to convert from a fraction to a percentage, you first find an equivalent fraction that's out of 100 and then take the numerator as your percentage. In my first example, it asked me to write 3/5 as a percentage, so I'm going to start off by thinking how I can get 3/5 to a fraction that's out of 100. I know to get there that I've times the denominator by 20. So on the top, get an equivalent fraction, 3 times 20 gives me 60. And therefore my numerator of 60 is my percentage. 60% would be my answer. In my second example, I'm asked to write 3/25 as a percentage. I first need to look at how to get an equivalent fraction out of 100. So in this particular example, I need to times my denominator by 4. Therefore my numerator becomes 3 times 4, which is 12, and therefore my answer is 12%. Lastly, to convert from a fraction to a decimal, we're going to use some of our previous conversions to help us out. Firstly, we're going to convert our fraction into a percentage, as we did previously, and then we're going to divide that answer by 100 to convert it into a decimal. So in my first example, I'm asked to write 3/10 as a decimal. I'm first going to say that 3/10 I want to write as a fraction out of 100, and I can do this by timesing my denominator by 10. That therefore means on the top I get 3 times 10, which is 30, and therefore this is 30%. To convert that percentage into a decimal, I simply divide its value by 100, and therefore I get an answer of 0.30, which is the same as 0.3. In my second example, I'm asked to write 13/20 as a decimal. I'm first going to write my denominator as a fraction out of 100, and I can do this by timesing it by 5. I therefore need to do the same to my numerator. 13 times 5 gives me 65, and therefore I know that that's the same as 65%. To convert this to a decimal, I'm going to need to take 65 and divide it by 100. That gives me a final answer of 0.65. The final thing that you might be asked to do is to order fractions, decimals and percentages. In our example, we're asked to put the values below in order of size with smallest first. So we have 9/25, 0.4 and 37%. We can use the conversions that we looked at previously to help get them in a consistent form. I strongly recommend either doing percentages or decimals. So firstly, I know that I can get 9/25 as a percentage by writing the denominator of the fraction out of 100. To get there, I need to times both the top and bottom by 4. So 9 times 4 gives me 36, and therefore this is the same as 36%. I know that I can convert 0.4 into a percentage by multiplying it by 100. So 0.4 times by 100 gives me an answer of 40%. Lastly, 37% is already written as a percentage, so we've now got them all in percentage form. Comparing these percentages, I can see that 36% is the smallest, 37% comes next, and 40% is the biggest. When I write these into order, it's really important I use the original form that they were given in. So this would be 9/25 first, followed by 37%, and then 0.4 at the end. A question like this will typically be worth at least 2 marks. 1 mark is obviously awarded for getting your final answer right. The other marks will be for your working out and for getting them all in a consistent conversion. So what I'd like you to do is log into My Maths and complete the 2 fraction, decimal and percentage tasks that I've set for you on there. Remember, to get into My Maths, the first login is always the school login, which is Uppingham and Acute. You then need to log into your portal, and if you've forgotten these details, they're attached in the Resources to Help You section on Show My Homework. You should aim to get at least 70% on both of these tasks to demonstrate that you've understood the work. If you do need to retry any of the tasks but they've disappeared from your homework list, you can find them again in the Results tab when you're logged into your portal. If you are struggling to complete some of the work from today's lesson, then please do not hesitate to get in touch via comment on Show My Homework. I'll try to make myself as available as possible and get a reply to you as quickly as I can. If the issue requires a little bit more input from myself, I might ask to arrange a time to meet on Teams where I can give you some personalised help with that specific problem.